ICFRC hosts community programs to address topics of international interest. We thank our members, volunteers, and interns for making these forums possible since the year Microsoft introduced Word, 1983. I want to acknowledge our university and community supporters, the University of Iowa International Programs, the University of Iowa's Honors Program, the University of Iowa Center for Public Policy, and the Stanley UI Foundation Support Organization for their financial support. And I want to also thank today's special sponsors, Midwest One Bank, Taxes Plus, and Dave Wu. I also thank City Channel 4 for professionally recording our programs for cablecast on City Channel 4 or 118-2 and the UI Library's digital archives. Over 200 ICFRC podcasts can now be found on iTunes. It is my pleasure to introduce Monica Gordillo. Monica is a lecturer in management and international management at Iowa State University in Ames. Monica received her BA in Business Administration, Summa Cum Laude, from the University of San Francisco de Quito, Ecuador in 1992. She received a Master's of Philosophy International Business from Cambridge University in 1996 and a Master of Arts in Latin American Studies from the University of Kansas in 1998. Additionally, Monica is the mother of one of our fabulous interns, Margit Herman. So thank you, Monica. We definitely appreciate Margit and all she does for us. Now, today, Monica will be speaking to us about corporate social responsibility as an increasingly important and visible topic in the business world, as evidenced by many corporations that are adopting social responsibility actions in their business practices. However, social responsibility also has limitations and difficulties for firms, which present important questions. She will dive into the benefits and costs associated with implementing corporate social responsibility, along with what companies are doing to embrace social responsibility in Latin America. Please join me in welcoming Monica Gordillo.
Good afternoon, guys. This is kind of intimidating to have that light in front of me and to know that I'm being recorded. So I am really happy and excited to be here. I'm really happy and excited to be with you guys. But if I'm just blinking too much, that's why, okay? All right, well, I want to first tell you a little bit why this topic is important to me. I am originally from a country in South America. The country is Ecuador. So you see that tiny green part in South America? That is Ecuador. Ecuador is still very dear to me, even though I have lived in this beautiful country for 20 years. And I have still in Quito, a lot of people that I love very much. My original city is Ibarra, a little bit farther north. But I have two beautiful ones in my life. My daughter, of course, she's already a junior here, but my son already decided to be one more Hawkeye. So he will be joining the university next year. Of course, you can tell that I'm excited about that, even though I work for another university very close to home, right? All right, let's go ahead and start talking a little bit about social responsibility. Social responsibility, it's about decisions that companies and managers make. And so the first question is what firms really are responsible for? That is the question that managers should ask and that each individual should ask. So we have that when we are talking about corporate social responsibility, we have more than just one element that should be judged. So it is not only financial return, that it should be more thinking about the environment and the community. besides thinking about the employees. So if you want just one specific concept, because there are many ways to define social responsibility. This was done by the World Business Council for Sustainable Development. And the definition goes, the continuing commitment by businesses to behave ethically and contribute to economic development while improving the quality of life of the workforce and their families, as well as of the local community and society at large. Well, we have the definition, but then what it would be important is to actually connect that definition to what companies really are all about. So when companies embrace this definition, can not only have it in the books, but it has to be part of their strategy. And it has to be a very important part of how they define their goals and how to achieve those goals in a sustainable way, not only in their home country, but in all the countries that they are active. So I ask you a question. Do we have social responsibility here in the States? Yes, we do, right? A good example is a company like Target, for instance. That's very close to home. We all know what they are about. They have and they publish every year what it is called a corporate social responsibility report. And to give you an example of what they do with this whole concept of social responsibility, for instance, they are committed of giving 5% of the income to support communities, especially in education. So that means that out of the revenues that this company is having, they will give a part to each one of the communities that they are in. So if you have a target here that you do, part of the revenues that are coming to that particular company will be given to schools that are surrounded in this area. That's what it means. That is not the only commitment that they have, but it's just to give you an example how the concept is applied here very, very close to home, right? Now, what I'm going to do is try to tell you a little bit more about what it is to have social responsibility in other countries. And so for that, I'm going to first review a little bit the difficulties when having this concept done in different countries, especially in developing countries, which are the majority of the Latin American countries that we can have. So many times, this concept is not well known all over those countries, and there are differences of awareness depending the country itself. You have that many of those Latin American countries suffer from economic instability. There is higher risk when you do an investment. That's what it is all about. And usually it is when you are thinking about social responsibility is more considered a luxury. So something that it comes only if you have higher income. Many times, when you find social responsibility done in countries in Latin America, it is usually seen in areas that are urban. But in rural areas, you actually have a lot less. Finally, many critics have said that it is just a way to justify profits that many companies will have. And that there is a very little consistency between what it is said by one company that is social responsible and another one, because there are little standards given by the government. Okay, so finally, those standards many times can be changed without really having a good measure to figure out which one is the best standard to follow. So we have that what I'm going to be talking about today is about specific cases from specific countries. So we have Chile, Mexico, Brazil, and Colombia. I'm going to be presenting you cases of companies that are originally from those countries, but also from companies that are from different countries that have been or have been acting as a good players within those countries and have also followed social responsible concepts in those countries. Now, it is important to note that all of those countries in Latin America have been integrated into international trade since the colonial times. And they are mainly based on export-led development models. So it's important to actually remember that they are counting in the majority of the GDP for commodities or for any minerals or gas that might be the biggest and the biggest amount of income that is actually receiving those countries. Mexico and Brazil are the ones that particularly are seen as countries that have changed a little bit that model, because they are the ones that have the greatest percentage of manufacturing exports that can be possibly counted towards the GDP of those countries. This is the case of Chile to begin with. In Chile, we see that Chile accounts of 7% of the global exports of non-ferrous minerals. And mining provides 20% of Chile's GDP and 60% of the exports. So how is that has any effect? Well, it means that if you actually look at the Chileans' government income, mining provided between 2000 and 2005 2.1 billion in revenues. But if you actually see between 2005 and 2011, they actually provided 11.5 billion. And the boom, the super increase, was mainly because of the change in the prices of commodities. So this means that the economy is based on the prices of the commodities that you might actually have. Having this in mind, then it becomes important to see one of the companies that actually is associated with mining. Pelambres is a mining company that it is actually very active in what is called the Choapa region. They are important because they represent 15% of the region's GDP and employs 4.8% of the region's labor force. Out of those 4.8%, 60% are local. Now, this company is actually owned by the majority by a Chilean company, which is called Lusic. But they have also investors that are coming from Japan. This company has seen a lot of issues that are related with the environment, especially because they drain a lot of the materials into the Chiapas River, contaminating a lot of the water that is actually serving not only the company, but everyone that is part of that region. And so that's why they created what is called the Minera Los Pelambres Foundation in 2002. The idea was to actually make sure they provide new ideas, new ways to do things so that the environment degradation will go down. One of the ideas was to actually invest in ways to innovate, ways to get water, get it from the sea, which is very close, and extract all the salt out of it so that they will use that water for the process of the plant instead of using clean water and having that way less contamination going on the rivers. Another way of doing it, it's actually trying to reduce the amount of water overall that they use. So not only looking for ways to actually innovate where they get the water from, but also ways to reduce the amount of water used in the process. And finally, we have that another way of polluting, it's by air. And they created the community fund and commitment out of the foundation that will be overseeing all the projects and making sure that if there is any risk or if there is any potential environmental damages, they will have the money to actually solve it and be going after that right away. They actually provided $3 million in seed money for that particular purpose. Now, another interesting case is Mexico. Mexico is the 13th largest exporter in the world. In 2017, the U.S. received 81% of Mexico's exports. Mexico's number one export is manufacturing products. It also exports silver, fruit, vegetables, coffee, and cotton. Over the last 10 years, the industry average is about 35% of Mexicans' GDP. Now, this wonderful country has a two-sided economy. And why is that I say so? Well, because you see, if we divide this country into the income distribution, we will see a great disparity, which means that more than 50% of the population is living below the poverty line. So, Mexico has the second highest degree of social economic disparity among the 34 members of the Nations of Organizations for Economic Cooperation and Development. It is important to know what is the GDP and how that has changed over time. It is improving. However, what I'm talking about disparity, I'm talking about, for instance, that you can find the second most richest person in Mexico. His name is Carlos Slim. His estimated 5% return on wealth alone could cover the cost of some 2 million low-wage workers at a minimum wage of $4.50 US per day. The wealth of Slim and just 3 other Mexican billionaires account for 9% of the country's GDP, equivalent to the income of nearly 20 million Mexicans on the other side of the inequality equation. So you have the two lowest bracket. That's what I'm referring to. So it becomes important then to understand the environment that a company might be surrounded with when taking and figuring out what social responsibility might mean in that country. Simek, it's a company that is a Mexican company, so it is originated in Mexico, but it's a company that it's not only an important player in Mexico, but in other countries in the world, and is a global building material company. This company is also present here in the United States. It has 11 plants, 43 distributors, and 207 ready-mix concreters. This company actually has tried not only to serve the self-construction and government, which are the biggest and most wealthier market that you can find, but also to try to see if they can help the self-construction itself, that is 50% of the market, and that it has actually come up to be 40% of the sales of Simek. Now, this is what I'm referring to. People live in this type of construction. So Simek is not only trying to provide cement for bigger companies and corporations, but also to provide ways to improve lives of a lot of the people that they are their customers. This is in the outskirts of Monterrey. It's just a picture of that. So how do they do that? We have to think about, first of all, of a concept that is important to understand to actually understand how do they do it. The base of the pyramid is the concept. And that is an economic term that refers to the poorest two-thirds of the economic human pyramid. More broadly, the bottom of the pyramid refers to the market-based model of economic development that promises to stimulate, alleviate widespread poverty while providing growth and profit for multinationals. So, we have that the idea here is that you have a lot of issues that are related with people, first of all, not having all the time a stable employment. That lady over there working on the street, it's what you will call part of the informal economy. So she doesn't have a boss, but she has just a few things to go and sell on the street. So she never knows if she's going to make it or not at the end of the month, right? Because she doesn't have a salary. That is another example of that. So if you don't have a salary all the time, how can you possibly dream about having a home, right? You do not have savings. You are barely living all the time with what you get. And nobody's really going to be thinking that you are a credible person to give you any loans, right? Nobody in the right mind will actually think about that. And so that is some of the issues that Simek have actually seen. Besides that, these people will actually usually have big families, but they will be constrained to be living in 2, at the most 3 little rooms where it would be just the whole thing, 3 rooms where they will have to leave all of them, and that will include everything, the kitchen, the living room, everything. All the areas will be in those 3 rooms. They do not have the technical expertise. They do not know how to build anything. They actually do not know how to design a house or how to better use any of the materials. And they do not have a place to storage any material that they will buy. So if they have a little bit of money and they want to do an expansion of the house, add another room, they really don't have a space where to put whatever concrete that they will buy. And if you leave unattended any concrete, well, the water, the rain, the weather in general will destroy it. So you will be spending your money, but you will never be using it. And so that is part of the planning skills that are important and needed. So how to fix it? Having in mind that this is also a potential market, that they are also in need of a house, and that they will do a lot more work to make it happen, you are then facing a potential opportunity, right? As a company, as Simek having that in mind. And so instead of just selling concrete, they decided to have in mind selling to the group of people. So what is that means? It is sort of different than the concept that we have. Because if you have here a loan, you are thinking, it is my loan, it is my house. Over there, what they do is that they find a community, a neighborhood, that they are all in need. So each one of those guys that I have there is just one family. All of those families get together, and they find ways to help each other. So when I say find ways to help each other, they actually contribute so that the family that is going to be building the extra room will have enough at the end of the month to pay whatever loan that they have actually gotten. And they help each other when the turns come up. So they go around. That is to help each other. But they help each other in more than one way. And I will show you how they do it. They will be also given by Simek special education and training. Because since they do not have any of that knowledge, how can they do and use better their product if they do not have that specific type of learning? And Simek, on top of that, helps them to plan it out so that they will not have any product left outside, wasted, basically, without their attention. So, in the picture, you see how it works. Once it comes a time to actually get the loan and get everything put together, they all work towards building the house. All the group of people, they will show up. So they are not paying extra people to help them build. They all will work towards that. That has a fantastic result. It means that the building time goes down. Instead of being between 4 to 7 years to build the extra room, it will take 60% less of the time in average. They will actually be spending 35% less than what they would on their own terms. And of course, there will be a lot more people doing the same thing, right? So this meant that for the company, by 2011, 45 million of 45 were the revenues that they got, and 3.5 million in just profit. So it is lucrative. right? It makes sense from the financial perspective, but it also helps a lot the people because you see the difference in terms of the construction that can be coming out of it. It is not only done, this concept, the Simek, started in Mexico. It's not only done in Mexico now. It's also done in Colombia, Costa Rica, and the Dominican Republic and Nicaragua. Of course, after doing all this work, the United Nations provided a special mention and an honor to Simek, receiving the award of Habitat Business Award for Best Practices in Affordable Housing and Solutions. All right, I see that many of you are drinking coffee. So, I'm sure that you have, at some point in your time and your life, thought, okay, if I want to be really awake, what would it be best? To have an espresso or to have a normal cup of coffee and 8 ounces cup of coffee? What do you think? Espresso? Cup of coffee?
The same.
The same? All right, let me tell you guys. Okay. Actually, you get a lot more caffeine depending on 3 different elements: the type of beans that you use, the quantity of water that the beans have been exposed to and the timing, and the brewing method. So the truth is that the bigger the cup, the longer the time that it has been touching the beans, the greater quantity of coffee you get. Or caffeine, I'm sorry. Because, you see, the bitterness of the coffee that you get from espresso is actually the flavor. But that does not mean that the flavor is related with the caffeine. I just thought we would, have a little bit of conversation besides that. Okay, so now that we know about the flavor, about the coffee, tell me, how do you choose where to have a good plantation of coffee? Anyone? How do you know that would be a good place to plant a coffee? Yes, that is exactly it. So the location is quite important. And if you want to actually have a fancy way of looking at this, well, you have to think about that coffee is like wine and honey. Right? You are looking for the perfect locations depending on the climate that you have and the soil. And that's why Starbucks actually has to think about where they have their plantations. You have there a map all over the place where it identifies the places where they actually get their coffee from. They actually get it from not just one country, but all over the world. Any ideas what is the region or what is the part of the world that they get the most? No?
South America.
You are close, very close, yes. Latin America is 50%. So it's an important part of the equation for Starbucks, right? And so they develop what is called CAFE practice, which is just basically their corporate social responsibility idea of how to do this process of coffee. Of course, Starbucks is not really in the business of producing the beans, right? It is just selling us very high price, I will say, but delicious product. And so CAFE practice was a set of coffee buying guidelines designed to support coffee buyers and coffee farmers to ensure high quality coffee and promote equitable relationships with farmers, workers, and communities, as well as to protect the environment. So let me show you a little bit of a graph. What it means is that Starbucks is not only now concerned with the suppliers alone. He is trying to be in touch with all the supply chain members to make sure that nobody gets left behind. And this is important because the ones who will get the least amount of money are the ones that are producing the coffee, right? And so Starbucks is trying basically to make sure that does not happen anymore. So the farmers is what Starbucks tried to make sure is not left alone, right? And the farmers have different needs. in the case of Mexico, right, that we are referring to, I'm going to give you an example of one specific farm so that you will see how this works. The farm is Santa Teresa Farm in Chiapas, Mexico. A beautiful zone, really green and having lots of water. But what it was important, it was the climate for Starbucks. And they knew that exactly in that place, they will get a really good coffee. But they actually also know that many of the growers have been used to having just what it is called the extra prime coffee, which is a low grade type of coffee because it grows faster. And even though it has a lower cost, you can sell it in the market really fast. Now, Starbucks is about quality. And so Starbucks decided to actually make sure they will connect with those farmers to try to help them switch from that type of coffee to a more quality or what it is called a specialty grade coffee. However, it takes time. It takes a long time to grow coffee. It takes actually 3 years. And if you are a poor farmer, it's really hard to stand without any revenue coming in. So that's why Starbucks had actually helped those people, giving them contracts for three years and giving them the money and the funds to actually have different programs to help them out. So some of the programs that they give them is try, first of all, to actually educate them, to actually make them understand why it will be beneficial for the farm and for Starbucks to have more organic and sustainable ways to use the land. So when we talk about sustainable, we are talking about trying to use what it is, part of the land to begin with. So before, many of those plantations will cut off all the shade trees that are generally bigger in size, and they will just put rows and rows of coffee plantation. That has two problems. You do not have as much coffee at the end, so the yield is less, and the land gets overused. So you are having a lot of issues with the land and the erosions of the land. So Starbucks decided to actually make sure that anyone who will be part of their chain or their supply chain, they will actually make sure they will not cut any of those trees. And besides that, they will teach them how to improve the yield without using pesticides, herbicides, or any chemicals with their plants. So it was an improvement for the farm, but at the end, it is also an improvement for Starbucks because they get, first of all, they fulfill part of the strategic goals that Starbucks has, but on top of that, they are securing the quality of the beans that they will be sourcing from different parts of the world. They can predict better. If they have better communication with the farmers, they can predict better if there are any issues. And as you saw in the map before, they have it all over the world. But since they are located in many instances in developing countries, the risks, the political and economic risks are high. So if they can predict what's going on around the world, they can better and easier predict where they are going to be sourcing from if there is any political risk or instability in one part of the world. Besides that, it is easier for Starbucks to have transparency, meaning everybody knows how much they are getting out of the profit, and everybody knows and exactly understands what are the objectives at the end of the day. So it is easier to have higher levels of cooperation. And of course, it's a good way to justify that they are charging almost $5 per cup of coffee, right? And they have a better image and brand awareness. So all of that they get by actually doing and applying this particular way of social responsibility. Now, the other country that we have for today is actually Brazil. Right here. Yes. So Brazil, it's the 8th largest economy And the GDP is breakdown into agriculture, more or less 6%, industry 21%, and services 72%. Nope. Okay. The population, it's about 209 million, and we have an average of GNI per capita of 8,000 approximately. And so this particular country has a very diverse population, and that includes more than 200 different types of indigenous people and 170 languages. It is estimated that Brazil hosts between 15 to 20% of the world's biological diversity and the greatest numbers of endemic species on a global scale. Here we have another example of a company. Natura. Natura is the company originally from Brazil. Have any of you heard of this company ever before? Well, the ladies, I need your help. All right. This is a company that sells all sorts of lotions and cosmetics. It's you see all of those bottles are having different types of products that are using plants or fruits from the rainforest. It started in Brazil in 1969. Here we have some of the examples: Patawa, Acai, and Pitanga. Have any of you heard of this? We have a lot of different juices that are, okay. The one that is more popular perhaps is Acai, because that one, it has a lot of minerals and antioxidants. So you, in those naked juices, maybe? No? Okay. Those are the ones that might actually have that. Patawa, let me tell you ladies, this is it, the solution that you were waiting for. It has a good oil that is great for your hair. So if you have a dry hair, there you go. This company is not only working in Brazil, they are also working in Argentina, Chile, Peru, Mexico, Colombia, and France. They are also here in the United States. Natura has a very interesting way to approach social responsibility. They decided to create a very distinct model when they decided to create the firm and how to sell the products. The number of sales consultants grew steadily every year and doubled between 2005 and 2010. Consultants were primarily, but not exclusively, middle-class housewives, and they served on average 20 to 30 clients each. Consultants were paid a commission based on sales and earned significantly more money than performing similar works in other companies because of the brand recognition and premium prices charged by Natura. The level of satisfaction among consultants was constantly monitored, and their satisfaction levels were significantly higher compared to those of competitor consultants. What it is also interesting is that because of those different ways of treating their salespeople, they managed to have only 30% of turnovers of those consultants. The main idea is that the business model that they want to implement is to have in mind and improve the life of more than 1 million people in Brazil, women most often than not, working in direct sales. The company considers that responsible practices are not a separate activity, but rather part of the company's everyday operation, from production to its business relation. So they think that one important part of being who they are is to treat really well the employees that they have. Now, that is not enough, though. You have to have a complete model of trying to make sure you integrate what you are saying as part of how you report and how you present your revenues. So they are not only thinking about financial revenues, they are also saying that they need to be sustainable when they are thinking about extracting all of those fruits that I was showing you before from the rainforest and making sure that the biodiversity is not lost there. And they are trying to educate the the employees that they have, but also the customers that they have. They are constantly trying to reduce greenhouse gases that they might have, and reduce also the impact of the production that they might have. So that is basically waste and water usage. And to improve the relationships that they have with all stakeholders. So how is that this looks like? Let me give you an example to make sure we have a clear idea of what is that I'm going after. When it comes to integrating reporting, you are not looking about just the bottom line, right? What you are trying to do is make sure it is very transparent how you actually say one thing and do it, right? And that you are giving access to that information to everyone, not just to your shareholders. So they, for instance, have posted all the activities that they have on the website, so that if you, whether you are an employee or someone that is just a customer or someone from any place, can actually access that information. Now, they have to make decisions. Part of the idea is that you, as a company, have to have multiple objectives of promoting an integrated management culture, providing a broad perspective on the range of issues, economic, environmental, and social, influencing the company's ability to create sustainable value, and accurately disclosing the organization's financial and non-financial performance. This meant that employees were asked to think about the impact of their decisions in 3 dimensions: economic, environmental, and social, right? All investments needed to bring the target economic returns, but within that constraint that they needed to account for social and environmental externalities. In essence, they were initiating a process of redefining acceptable organizational performance. So, Natura was confronted with the decision on whether to continue to use commonly available synthetic alcohol as a key raw material on its manufacturing process, or to change and to have what it is called an organic alcohol. Based solely on the economic criteria, the analysis show that the organic alcohol was 30% more expensive to acquire. However, if you have in mind what are all the other impacts between the two of them, then might be different the equation. So when you are having an organic alcohol, that it is not synthetic, right? That you are actually getting from sugarcane. It's the most frequent way to get it in Brazil. You have to burn the corn. That means that you are having green gases. When you are burning, you might be killing bees or small insects that help with pollination. That is part of the biodiversity. You have an impact with the fauna, right? You might be killing small animals that are part of that ecosystem. All of that should be counted as part of it. However, you see, we also have that if you are using an organic type of system, you are not using fertilizers. You are trying to use the land with different crops, not just sugar cane. So that helps the soil. And you are not using fermentation, which actually also damages the water. And you are helping educate everyone, the producers, the consumers, to actually how to do it better. So by the end of the day, if you compare the cost of the synthetic, adding all of those parts to the final equation, you have a net positive if you are actually having an organic alcohol in comparison to the other. This is what I am referring, that the company is trying to look at more an integral way to analyze cost and benefit. Now, another case in Brazil. This is a very interesting case because when we think about banks, we are not thinking about social responsibility. Most of the time, we think about just people that are giving loans, right? That is what a bank does. And so if we think about Brazil it is one of the biggest countries in Latin America. but more than 1/4 of the population lives on less than $2 a day. 13% live on less than $1 a day. They have high environmental deficiencies that afflict all the country, all different parts of the country. To give you an example, less than 10% of the wastewater is treated. Crime is also a big issue in Brazil. 82% of people who live in the cities have and face that issue. To give you an example, Rio de Janeiro is one of the world's most violent cities with a homicide rate of around 50 per 100,000 residents. Rival drug gangs control many Islam areas and defy our authorities when the authorities want to come in to those Islam areas. So, Banco Real started in 1925, and they started as a cooperative to finance farmers. They have an important partner, and the partner is ABN AMRO Holding from the Netherlands, which is the 11th largest bank in Europe and the 20th largest bank in the world. This company, Banco Real, since 2000, they decided to embrace sustainability. And the team of sustainability was created. The bank had initiated actions in various areas, such as social environmental screening for credit analysis, environmental focused products, microfinance, social environmental tests for suppliers, and internal reduction of waste and recycling, and having more conscious decisions about having a workforce diversity. So, they created what they call the 3 R's: reduce, reuse, and recycle. Uh-oh. Are we going over the time? A little bit. I'm really sorry, guys. I got excited. Okay. Just briefly. So we have that this company is definitely trying to use and changing the ways that they do their business within the organization by the three R's. But on top of that, they actually have tried to figure out ways to be active as a member of the society. Basically, not only deciding what is that they want to do, but also choosing wisely who are their customers and asking, should I keep on working with those businesses if they are actually damaging, or we know that they are having procedures that damage the environment? The answer in many cases has been no, and that's how they have changed. They have also been very proactive. They have more than 4,000 suppliers, and they have tried to communicate very regularly with each one of them to make sure they actually have their support, but at the same time, they change the ways that they are doing their business so that they are more in alliance with their main philosophies. Because of that, they have actually been very active also in trying to get the idea of microfinancing, which is just a very interesting concept because it is giving credit not only to the people that have a lot of money and that have collaterals, but to people that have none. Favelas is just the part of the outer skirts of the city, and they are very poor. Those are the places where those very poor people in Brazil might actually be living. Favelas is one of the places very close to Rio de Janeiro. And so you find that the average loan, it's not very high. It's only 430. They are usually only for 7 months. But what it is interesting is that those people that get the loan, it's for something that will help them get back into working harder. So they are self-employed projects that help them improve their lives. And the default is only 4%, which is lower than what you will find in a bigger corporations. On top of that, almost 100% they get and pay back on time. So it's really exciting to see how the numbers help the company as well. Of course, they have had really positive results. employees are really satisfied when you ask them that some of the surveys that they have had, they trust the company. They feel that the transparency has helped them. They feel that they have a positive relation, not only with the customers and the employees, but also with many NGOs that they have worked. Some NGOs have actually criticized them because not all the customers that they actually fund or give credit to or have relationships with follow the same standards. Some other banks have actually replicated that, and of course that means more competition. And in Brazil, as in any other developing country, you have ups and downs, right? And that has also a swing in what you can do in terms of social responsibility. So I go forward, guys, and I'm sorry I had a lot more for you, but we will actually get going with this. Some of the results, because that is important. The idea is, so what is this about, right? After hearing all of those cases, what is that? Why is that matter? Well, it matters because even though there are problems, implementing social responsibility helps the company. The company have a better image, better brand recognition, loyalty from the employees, loyalty from the customers, greater satisfaction, lower turnovers, greater innovation, and higher returns. However, it is also important for the communities because it has an impact on poverty. It actually creates a sustainable future. It is actually important for the consumers in those countries because those consumers, even if you are really poor, you are still consuming products, right? And those communities and the environment actually change for the better. Now, what do you think, guys? Are you part of the solution? How can you help change the level of social responsibility in a company? What do you think? Do you have any saying? What do you think? We are just individuals, right? Yes, please.
Use their product, and therefore you influence how they operate.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. Are we part of the solution? Yes. We are. And how do we do it? Make sure that when you are buying, you know what is that the company is doing. And if you don't know, make sure to figure it out. Thank you, guys.
Foreign corporations, especially from the U.S., have at times been accused of violating the sovereignty of Latin American countries, as was the case with the Chilean copper mines prior to 1971. How was the legacy of U.S. intervention in Latin America during the 20th century affected the perceptions of U.S. investment in Latin America, as well as the actions of business ventures there today? Mm-hmm.
Thank you for the question, guys. Well, you see, it's really hard to generalize how the investment has affected overall, because each case and each company is different. In many cases, if you think about, for instance, Starbucks, the effect has been really welcome. In many instances, those farms have actually changed and improved the way that they do their business, and that has trickled down. Families have a better income because of that, and of course, because of that, it's very much welcome, the investment and the different relationships with other foreign companies that are coming to Latin America.
I think we have time for one more. So why don't we see companies whose founding principles are social, environmental responsibility, such as Patagonia, lauded for their social responsibility, yet we see companies like Starbucks, a company that exploited thousands of coffee farmers for over a decade, celebrated for their CSR. Do you think that CSR is really a gauge of the good that a company does in the world, or an end of pipe solution that companies initiate to better their image?
That is a very good question. And it is a really tough one because, you see, there are many ways to actually criticize the companies. And companies might be slipping away. And that's why you guys come into place. It is important to be critical. It is important to try to change. It is important to at least try it. Patagonia is a great example of a company that has done it from inception, from the beginning. Starbucks did not. However, it is better to actually recognize that you have done something wrong for a very long time than never doing it so. So I am not completely sure if I will say that it's wrong to have social responsibility. I prefer a company that is thinking not only on the bottom line in financial terms, but thinking about the communities, the people that are affecting, and the environment. They're not doing so at overall. Now, of course, there are some cases, and we have seen that, where companies might actually have put a lot more money on showing off and having great marketing campaigns instead of actually using it to do the change. But that's why it is important for us to be vigilant and to figure out how much is true of what they are saying, what they're doing, right? Thank you, guys.
Okay. All right. We now conclude our program. I want to give a big thank you to Monica Gordillo for her presentation, and thank you so much. Now, Monica, as a token of our appreciation, we would like to present you with the highly coveted Iowa City Foreign Relations Council mug.
Thank you.
Thank you, Monica.
Thank you very much.
All right. We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.